it's a pleasure to be here, and appreciate the invitation, and particularly appreciate being on the program with Dr. Flynn. We've had a great partnership with FDA, and really appreciate the chance to share the stage with them again today. I wanted to kind of walk through a bit of what the Farm Foundation has done in partnership with FDA and industry. We've done quite a bit of work, and quite frankly, I could talk for a good deal of time. But as Elizabeth Taylor said to her 8 husbands, please don't worry, I won't keep you long. So, make sure I get this. Okay, great. For those of you how many people are familiar with the Farm Foundation? Oh my gosh, that's so many more hands than I normally get. That's great. But for those of you who aren't, the Farm Foundation's been around since 1933. It's a foundation that was essentially formed to be a catalyst for public policy discussions. So we actually are a nonpartisan, non-advocacy organization. We convene folks across the entire food chain to come together and try to identify different solutions and the consequences of those solutions. So it's been something that we've been committed to for quite some time, so that in case you're wondering, yes, I am a new face. So coming on board at the Farm Foundation is quite fun because it's a chance to kind of take a step back and begin to look at these issues that we're encountering in the industry from a broad perspective. And that's exactly why this particular issue was so perfect for Farm Foundation to get involved. It's an issue that has no boundaries by species or geography, which is something that we focus on. Agriculture, of course, has been committed to good stewardship for years. We've seen the results of that across the board. Access is needed to comprehensive information to meet new policies, and that is one of the things that we've been specializing in. And we have a unique reputation as an objective convener. We pride ourselves on not having an agenda. We joke about those agenda-free zones when we get together at a Farm Foundation meeting. So that's one of the reasons why we thought that this was a good issue and a good topic for the Farm Foundation to engage. I'm not going to go through these. Dr. Flynn's done a good job of kind of walking through the background on this, but of course the 2 guidances and then the revised VFD rule was the catalyst, and this January 1 date has been the date that we've been working against. We actually went together with FDA and USDA and put together a series of 12 regional workshops. They were held around the country. We had 12 regional workshops across the country. We had about 530 people attend, and we had livestock producers, veterinarians, feed suppliers, all kinds of different support organizations across the food and ag sector. We also had about 300 people attend via an audio cast or a webcast. But these folks were individuals that represented more than 3,000 producers and 2.6 million animals. So we were very pleased to get that kind of engagement from individuals across the industry. The project also included an online survey that was open to all interested stakeholders. We put out a total of about 340 surveys. We got about a 78% response rate of folks that completed that to 100%. And it led us to understand specifically what kinds of questions were out there from the industry and what kinds of concerns they had about this. So taking a look at how we went through the workshops, we had participation by senior FDA and USDA APHIS staff at all those meetings. Presentations by regional producers, vets, feed suppliers, but most of the time, as is often the case at events that we engage in, there was significant time for conversation and kind of going back and forth and asking those questions and engagement between the participants and FDA and APHIS. And I think it was a very productive time that was spent there. And I think, Mike Murphy, Dr. Murphy and Dr. Flynn would probably agree that FDA and APHIS left those meetings with a much better understanding of what kinds of questions the industry was going to have as this rolled out and was implemented. The impacts on industry that were identified in the 12 regional workshops, the number one was improved public perception, that they thought would be a big impact on the industry. And then the second was better livestock management. So it was going to force folks to be more cognizant of the use of antibiotics, and was going to force them actually to be more careful and exercise better stewardship on some of those preventative kinds of activities that Dr. Flynn referenced in his comments. Those were followed by an increased cost concerns and concerns about animal health, including access to antibiotics and veterinary services. Among farmers and ranchers, increased cost and additional paperwork, as you probably are not surprised, were seen as the greatest impacts. When you take a look at impact on day-to-day business activities, the number one issue there were increased documentation and paperwork, as I mentioned, followed by confusion and a need for education. So knowing what exactly was expected and how that was going to be rolled out on an operation was a big concern. And then the other big one that came up, and this is one that we've continued to look at and try to identify how do you solve this particular issue, is the lack of veterinarians and the change in that relationship between the producer and the veterinarian. So those were the biggest topics that were identified there. So when we take a look at next steps and what we're looking at doing there, one of the things that we talked about the most was education and outreach. So we have, there's been significant educational efforts that are being undertaken by farm, industry, and professional organizations, federal and state agencies. It's been kind of funny. In my previous life, I was focusing more on crop side of things, and coming back into the animal industry, it's been amazing to me how this is a topic that has shown up on everything. So you wouldn't think there was a person left in the country that hadn't heard about it, but unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. There's still a lot of concern that exists concerning small and independent producers. I think about folks like my brothers and my sister. They all have backyard chicken flocks. I mean, to be perfectly honest, my brother had no clue until I gave him a call. So I earned my dinner that night in Ohio. But there's a lot of stakeholders that still have an increased role to play in reaching those small producers. Cooperative Extension is launching another major effort to do some education. I know that there's a lot of state departments of agriculture that are interested in renewing the educational outreach, and working directly with the farmers and ranchers on a daily basis has been a strong focus. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that we're doing, but first I just want to touch briefly on a workshop that we conducted in March of this year, actually, that we organized with USDA's Economic Research Service, and we had about 130 medical, veterinarian, economic researchers, the pharmaceutical industry representatives, government agency representatives, pulled together to discuss how do you incentivize new products to reduce medically important antibiotic use. And the three things that came up in that particular workshop was the need to establish which animal diseases should be targeted for incentives, model the interaction of veterinary and human drug development to establish whether and what types of human drug R&D incentives can be utilized in veterinary products, and analyze different types of government drug development incentive programs in the context of animal pharma, which are the most efficient and feasible specifically for vet products. So that was an incredibly helpful workshop to have, and it's that kind of ongoing dialogue that's probably going to need to continue as we wrestle with this. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to mention was we're working with the Animal Health Institute. We said, so how do you reach these small folks who may not be members of NCBA or the poultry associations? How do you get to those individuals? So we were scratching our head trying to figure out how do we focus on those folks who probably don't have a regular vet that they use, or those veterinarians who are treating food-producing animals that think they're treating pets. So those types of folks. And we came up with a couple of different ideas. One were sale barns. So, you still have folks who bring in 1 or 2 head a year to a sale barn. So NCBA and Livestock Marketing Association decided that they were going to reach out to sale barns. And the other real big possible outlet were retailers, folks who are selling bagged feed. Folks that my brother goes in, he goes into TSC or Rural King or one of the co-op retailers and buys his bags of feed. So we thought, okay, what if we kind of reached out through them and had a point of sale card or information? So we spread these out on the tables. There's not one for everybody, I'm sorry. They were heavy, and I just had my briefcase, so I only brought one because I was lazy. But it's on our website. At least I got a couple of snorts or chuckles. Has it been a long day for you guys? Okay. Well, this is my propaganda. So you see it here. And we developed these cards and sent them to cooperatives, such as Land of Lakes, Growmark, Southern States. We sent them to the corporate retailers, TSC, Rural King, and asked them to print these up and hand them out or make them available at their locations. So when folks come in and buy that feed, they'll get a heads up. It directs them to our website, which is farmfoundation.org/VFD rules, where it kind of lays out what the requirements are come January 1. And this was a strong effort that we thought would actually reach folks. The surprising thing were the retailers actually came back and said, oh, this is great because now it's more clearly communicated that this isn't a change that we as a company are taking necessarily. This is one that the whole industry is facing, and it helps them explain why the product that those small producers are buying may be changing for them January 1. So that's been really, really great. We've also are distributing these out through Extension and NASDA. And if anybody else in the audience has a use or an interest, we'd love to send it to you. We've actually created one that has some room for the retailer's logo or other folks' logo that can add it to that card. So that's a big part of that project. The other part of the project, and I even had a really nice little graphic of it. Oops, sorry. There we go. The other thing that we're doing is a series of radio interviews. We have 6 interviews that are being done. Joe Swedberg, who is the vice chair of the Farm Foundation, he's retired from Hormel. Wonderful participant in this. He has actually provided leadership for the Farm Foundation for the last 2 years for this. And so he actually kicked off the interview series. We did it with the National Farm Broadcasters Association. That actually has gone out to 28 different stations, 19 different states, so it's got an incredible pickup. That's probably about almost double their average pickup. And we'll be doing 4 more of those, featuring FDA, some of the industry folks talking about this particular rule. So we're hoping to reach some folks that way as well. Those interviews are also available on our website if anybody wants to go and take a listen to those. So the second step that was identified that needed to happen in our workshop series was continuing dialogue between industry and state and federal regulators. Pointing out that it's important to continue that progress and stewardship. Dr. Flynn went through that quite a bit. Really good work that's really good progress is being made on that. We're not letting up. It's critical not only to the successful implementation of the GFIs and VFD, but to also help help support a continuing process of stewardship and helping farmers identify ways to do it that's cost effective for their operations. In that vein, we've been continuing conversations with various members within the industry to try to see if we can get to some agreement on metrics or assessing the actual use pattern of antibiotics once the rule goes into effect. So we're looking to develop nationwide industry agreed upon metrics for measuring antibiotic use, and some of the work that's being done with the grants through FDA are part of what needs to be pulled into that. And we want to do that in partnership with key stakeholders, researchers, foundations, retailers, others within the industry. And so we're beginning some conversations there to see if we can actually pull everyone together and get some metrics and the process for measuring the use pattern in a way that's not overly burdensome, that's clear, and also, probably most important, consistent, so we can measure apples to apples. Another thing that we really want to do, and Dr. Flynn mentioned this as well as part of his process slide graphic, which I didn't think was that bad, by the way. It was very clear, it was easy to follow and understand, probably better than my pie chart earlier, is that you can measure the reduced use of antibiotics, but the ultimate goal, obviously, is to reduce the emergence of resistance. And so when we develop these metrics, we probably need to keep in mind what metrics can we gather that can be used to tease out that ultimate measurement of, are we actually reducing development of resistance to antibiotics? And then the final step is access to veterinary services and the supply of food animal veterinarians. And this is probably, in my mind, one of the more daunting ones as well. Near term, state and federal officials really need to work with the colleges of veterinary medicine and professional vet organizations. Even back in the dark ages when I was in college, it was really tough to get folks into the vet schools that were actually focusing on food-producing animals as opposed to small animals, small companion animals. So we need to really kind of take a look at that, because particularly in remote areas of the country, everyone knows that access to veterinarians is difficult, particularly when you're looking at a situation where veterinarians will be picking up more liability. There really needs to be that veterinary client partnership that's developed. And I think there might be some opportunities for other stakeholders, including feed suppliers, cooperative extension, and state regulatory authorities, and taking a look at that. I think the one thing I want to mention, because I think it would be remiss not to, are the producers out there that are producing minor species. So you take a look at elk and bison and some of the species that are not widespread. Their biggest concern is continuing access to antibiotics due to the limited market size that they present. So there's going to be a lot of work, I think, at continuing to try to make sure that they have access to the pharmaceuticals and the antibiotics that they need as well.